Hi, this is Bruce, and welcome to my brief tutorial on cold and dark taxi ready for the A42-500 by CARENADO. This is my first video in P3D version 5 with the hotfix 1 in place. Hotfix 2 is coming out in a couple of weeks, so we'll see what that does. My i5 is a -6600K is what I use for a CPU. The NVIDIA is a GTX 1070. It seems to hold on real well in a P3D version 5 environment. Well, let's go ahead and have a look. We're outside cold and dark condition. I just thought I'd mention some of the shifts options that are available. Shift 1 gives you the EADI and the EHSI. And of course, it's black because there's no power yet. 2 gives us the AP related items. 3 gives you the FMS. 4 links instead of shifts. Static options are Shift 5. You can add tow car static elements if you wish. Passenger doors work in unison, so Shift E always opens all 3 of them. The third one is on the back right, in case you were wondering. So that's explanatory. And then the V-bar flight director, I prefer the V-bar in the flight director as opposed to a cross-hatched piece, and I might be able to show you that a little bit later. And then Shift 6 is how we got to the cold and dark condition versus any of the other conditions. I just click this, and I click the done, and there it was, ta-done. Okay, jumping inside just briefly, the parking brake is here, that's off. Left clicking it, that's on. If you want to get rid of the yokes, there's a little button here at the top where you can click at the base and they'll both go away. You want them back, click the base, there it is. Now click the button as an alternative. You can see that's how it's taken care of. Alright, at this point then, we want to become, or I'm going to familiarize myself and anybody else that's interested with the basic features that we're looking at, many of which we won't use directly, but I'm always curious to know what they are. If you want to jump ahead to the start procedure itself, probably go ahead about 20 minutes and check that out. It'll only be about 8 or 9 minutes long after that, and just scroll through until you find it. So in case you're interested, up here on the overhead is the flight control. It controls the rudder movement, so it can narrow it or widen the range of the rudder travel. Leave it on auto. Based on air speeds, it'll limit rudder travel. High speeds limits, slower speeds expands it. Landing, particularly important. If there's a fault, you can manually put it on low speed, and that'll improve the rudder travel for more control on approach and landing and taxi and all that kind of stuff. And then the MFC is an onboard computer that looks for faults, keeps things going, and you'll get a fault indication here if there is one, or down on the Annunciator panel. There's 3 kinds of power on the aircraft. One's DC current, another one's alternate current with constant frequency, which would be AC. Alternating current with variable frequency is ACW, or wild. That's what that's referring to, variable frequency. The hydraulics, blue is on the left, green on the right. What they do is listed below here. The auxiliary pump only works on the ground, which makes sense because we've got prop brake and nose wheel steering involved with that one. This runs off a DC motor. These guys run off the ACW buses, 1 for blue and 2 for green. And in order for this power to go to those pumps, you have to have the props turning in the auto condition in order to get up the NP, the rotation of that, fast enough to produce that kind of electrical power that would generate through here. So anyway, the auxiliary pump is really a good one at the start, and we'll see there's another button below the parking brake too that's useful for hotel mode, which gives the aircraft power like a GPU normally would, but you're going to fire up the right engine. Don't let the prop turn using the prop brake, and then that'll be your electrical source after that. We'll do that too here in a minute. Okay, so you've got these 3 crossfeed, don't worry about that. If you wanted to see the gauge involved in all these cases, it's right down here. It's a triple gauge. This is the accumulator pressure for the brakes, blue and green lines. So that just might give us a sense of things. And that button I mentioned below the parking brake, that's right here, hydraulic auxiliary pump. If you were to push this, it's only available for 30 seconds. It's useful for the parking brake hotel mode bit for the prop. Okay, let's go back up above and finish off where we left off. Probes, you want all those on. Heating, to soften the window in case there's a bird strike on takeoff. The side windows, anti-icing, that's great for fogged up windows. And then as you go down here, the airframe air bleed, that's good because if you need airframe or engine de-icing, you'll have to have that on. Here you see the emergency exterior light, seat belts, no smoking. These are the basic lights, windshield wipers on either side, annunciator light issues, storm dome. This standby compass goes with a drop-down compass that I'll show in just a minute from the pilot's point of view. Alright, so we've got all these covered. Oh, the engine starts, you'll be normally putting it over here. Here's your start 1, start 2, and the pumps for the fuel on either side for each engine. Over here it'll be oxygen main supply, passenger supply, the avionics vent, leave it on auto. This is to cool off the avionics with exterior air. There's a little vent, I believe, at the belly of the aircraft. If there was a fault, then you could manually fiddle with it, but we don't expect to do that. Recirc Temp, it's already on auto, so we don't need to fiddle with those. This is just telling the gauge which compartment I want to check into. If I want to manually set the temperatures, it goes in 10-degree increments. Flow, norm, it already, or actually if you click it, it should be then on norm. Right now it's off, and by the way, there is no light that shows on this one. And then here, pack valves are there and engine bleeds are here. If you've only got one engine bleed on, the ground crossfeed is activated automatically, and when you have two it won't work, and it only works on the ground. So I think that covers all the overhead sufficiently to be generally familiarized with what's up there. Okay, then dropping down here, pilot's instruments explained. Oh, I meant to do this. I'm going to turn the battery on now, right here with a left click, because it really help us visualize what we're going to do now. Pilot's instruments, we've got the FD bars right here. It's going to show up on this. Hang on, left click, there it is. You see that chevron? Earlier I picked it as opposed to a crosshatch. Let me zoom in there. See, there's the crosshatch piece. I prefer the V-bar instead. That was the Shift 5 that I got that. This turns that on and off. Here's that little extra compass that I mentioned right there. I don't know why it's spelled that way. Maybe it really is. Seems kind of strange. But make it come and go. Now, if you want this to light up at night, if you ever did need it, it's up here. Compass, standby compass. There, it's nice and brightly lit. So we'll get rid of that. We'll turn that back off. All right. And then we'll just spend a little bit of time looking around in here. This is your electronic attitude director indicator. I love all those words. Talk about long. EHSI is your electronic horizontal situation indicator. I think that we should all be very familiar with those if we've ever flown before. This, however, is not familiar. It took me a minute or so to realize what was going on and to read up on it. This is the power management switch, and it's going to change takeoff to maximum continuous thrust, to climb, to cruise. You do not use the maximum continuous thrust unless you are in a dire straits and a dangerous circumstance. Takeoff is used for taxiing, the takeoff itself, and on approach, landing, and taxiing to parking. Climb is used, of course, during the climb phase, and only when you reach your cruising altitude do you put it on cruise. And the preferred altitude in this aircraft is probably 18,000 feet. At that altitude, it gets the best true airspeed, and that seems to be the altitude that pilots like the most. The Annunciator Panel is part of your centralized crew alert system. It shows you faults visually. Sometimes it'll sound off an alarm audibly as well. There's 3 buttons at the bottom. Recall to bring back some of the ones that may have been eliminated. This is to clear most of them. And then the takeoff inhibit is here, and that'll eliminate some others and leave others as well. Here's your fuel quantity here. The ADC, it's a switch that is air data computer related. It takes the wind pressures and things like this and translates them into data that you can visualize, like altitude and such, speeds, things like this. That's all what this is doing for you. If it's to fault, you could go to the other one in redundancy. The display select, that one will give you radar for weather, and also if you're in a dangerous condition with the terrain can overlay that, and you'll get that advisory as well. The autopilot is right here in the middle. If it's in white letters in this area here, that's called the advisory display unit. It's white, it means it's advisory, or armed rather, and if it's green, it's captured. just to let you know what those are. And then down below are your automatic flight control system issues. And there is a button down below the pilot, and I don't know really if it has any practical value, but underneath this there's a normal flight and a test, and I think it should be put on normal flight. I don't think that it makes really any practical difference, but excuse me, but I'd like to be able to do that first. Okay, heading, nav, approach, back course, bank, gives you half bank if you click it, standby, indicated airspeed, vertical speed, altitude on or off. This is your pitch wheel, autopilot, yaw damper, and couple. You can go pilot, co-pilot, or both together under 1,200 feet. That can be useful. And indicated airspeed is useful for climbing out, and descent, vertical speed is the one that you want to use more often. This indicated airspeed on the climb out is, you aim for about 160 knots at a rate of climb of 1,000 to 1,500 feet per minute. If you want the heading bug to jump right to the heading of the nose of the aircraft, just left click it and it automatically jumps to that value. Altitude runs in thousands. If you right click, it'll run in hundreds. Right click it again, it goes back to thousands. Very self-explanatory. On is for the nav 1, nav 2 here. If you go to hold, it holds this figure here while you alter the other one and then change it, and then you go back to on, and now the new value is the one that it pulls forward. So that hold just holds the previous while you're changing things around. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And auto pressure, let's do that. Dropping down now. Looking past the gear lever, looking past the flaps, looking past the trims. This automatically knows the elevation of the departure airport up to 3,500 feet. You can change the landing airport's elevation by left clicking or right clicking. Drops it. The descent rate, leave it alone unless you're descending very rapidly at 1,500 or more a minute. Then you can click on fast, and it goes from a cabin pressure decrease rate of 400. Fast makes it 500 feet per minute drop in cabin pressure. So that's what that would be used for. I doubt that I would use that, but it is nice to know that. At least I like to know that. The gauges here, torque, NP is like N2 in a jet engine. It's the rotation of the propeller shaft. The temperature then, here, ITT. The NH, NL. The NH is the larger needle. There's a tiny skinny NL needle just below that. And what they're doing is they're reporting to you with the thin needle the low pressure compressor speed, the wider, more important predominant needle, and also the one that's associated with the digital data is the high pressure compressor speed. And of course all of them just don't get it in the red zone. Your torque here will end up on this orange area there. You can set though the white one in case you wanted to come up with some different values to keep your eye on it, say here or here. You can do that as well as you like. Down below then you've got the fuel here. You've got oil, fuel flow per minute there. All of this is available for you to look at. Leave that on norm for cabin pressure. And nice placard there to note. And I'm just turning pages, going as quickly as I can. Okie doke. Let's go down a little bit further. I'm not going to go through the Pro line. There's lots of videos on that. I think even I did one. It's got its good and bad features, but not my favorite, but there it is. You can use Flight 1, I think, instead. This little rectangle here is the Efus control panel. It's got a lot of good features. Full arc, map, ground speed versus time to go, bearing knob 1, bearing knob 2. Bearing knob 1 is good for a blue pointing arrow for these features and a green pointing arrow for those features, just to show the color differences. And then these are for dimming. Down here is weather, and you've got weather or map. You've got your your tilt rather, up and down. You've got off, standby, on, and then I'm not sure what FP is, or test. Maybe I'm not sure what FP is. I should have looked that up. I apologize for that. But you've got increase, decrease. This is to eliminate some rain in there so that you get a better quality. It's called the rain echo attenuation compensation. I don't know that it really does anything. Stabilized target sector, I don't think that those really matter a whole lot. Basically, these are the two features that I like the most, and on is where you would normally leave your weather anyway. Cockpit door, deny, close, open. Redundancy here. Then let's drop down and look at the power levers here. There's a gust lock right there. Left clock will take it on or off. It's on right now. Ground idle is G1. Flight idle is F1 in the air. You shouldn't have the power levers back farther than flight idle. This white bar there is what they call the notch. It's because how it feels physically when you're actually in the cockpit. Here it's just a simulated piece. And then up here would be what they call the ramp and then the wall. If you push this clear to the top to the wall, you get 115% power. You don't want to use that. This is where you want to have it at all phases of flight, except on descent, and then you can pull it back into this range here to control your air speeds. Ground idle is where you leave it for taxiing. Here's your control levers. Right now they're in the fuel off, shut off position at the very bottom. A left click will advance them by one bit at a time, like feather up to auto. Auto is where you leave them all the time after you've to taxi. Taxi, take off, climb, cruise, descend, approach, land, taxi. You just don't leave them in any other position. Override is if you're in some nasty icing conditions and some dangerous spots. Right clicking will bring them back to feather, to cool down your engines for say 20-30 seconds, and then right click again will take them to shut off. Your takeoff flaps will be at 15. Landing can be either 25 or 35 depending upon what you think is best. Those are all available for you. And then down below here are radios and ADFs. The ADFs, antenna, on, tone, etc. These can be adjusted by clicking right on the numbers. These comms cannot. They have to be done by the knobs, as you can see, and then changed over on, for instance, and off. This squawk here is by clicking on the numbers, which I like. Helps to control it. Again, comm and another ADF2 over here. There isn't anything else down here except some lights right here. Panel instruments, displays. So other than that, and then you can change your flight numbers if you want to. Whatever suits your fancy, and go from there. All right, let's see if there's anything else we need to cover before we run to, nope. We're going to go ahead then and get this plane started up, get the hotel mode in action. Okay, our parking brake is on. We're going to pretend that we don't have our battery on yet, so it'd be like this. We're going to go ahead and turn it on. We know what our fuel is. Our prop brake here is still off and guarded. Our gust lock we know is on. Our beacon we can turn on, tell people we're going to be firing stuff up. We're going to hit that little hydraulic button at the bottom of the parking brake right there. Then we're going to run back up and you'll see ready next to prop brake. That's important. So we'll open up our safeguard, we'll left click the prop brake to on. Then we're going to rotate our engine start to start A and B. I used my mouse wheel for that. Now you see it's prop brake, blue light came on. The right fuel switch then, we'll turn that on to run. Then we'll press start 2. Then we're going to roll down here and we're going to watch that NH run past 10 right there. Then we're going to go ahead and left click to feather on engine number 2. I'll turn the sound on now and we'll pop around outside to see the effects. What you'll see is this engine's going to get real loud, but the prop will not turn. Okay, you get the idea. So that's what the prop brake, and by the way I can put the guard back down if I want, that's what the prop brake accomplishes. And that also then provides the power that we need. Then we're going to check to make sure our hydraulic pressure, I'll do it this way, this here, it should be at 3, but it's not. How do we fix that? We're going to hit that little button again there, and it popped right up to 3 where it belongs. So that's the condition we want to see. Okay, then back up to the top. We're going to clear off some of these white buttons here emergency battery charge, left and right. We might as well go DC generator 1 and 2. Go up to the pumps here for hydraulics. The wild energy generators 1 and 2. Window heating, probes. Just keep walking it down. I like my side windows on. Airframe, air bleed, ready to go. Main. We're going to get rid of the override on exhaust. Recirc fans. I guess we're not going to do that yet, are we? Because we only have the right on, so I should have thought about that. We'll get rid of that one. And this is still on off. And I clicked it now. It says on my little pop-up. You probably can't see it on the video, but you will on your own. Nothing indicates. And pack valve and engine bleeds. We can go ahead and click those on the right side. The rest of this we don't need quite yet. Okay, then we're going to move on down through. We can set our altimeter. We can set our landing elevations on that business right here. Like if it's at 300 feet, we can set that to 300. The power management here is on takeoff. We can then check our charts for weights and takeoff speeds, and I found some really good material on that that's very handy. We can set our speed bugs over here. The orange one is the only one you can do by wheel. The rest are done by hand. The N2 is what that orange one would be. Takeoff torque will be around 90. That's already there. Fuel pump now, number 1. Let's go ahead and start the second engine. Fuel pump 1, start. We're going to run down here to watch the NH run past 10. And when it does, we'll left click on the control lever number 1. And we can see that's going to fire off. Now we'll see a difference outside. This prop is still not turning, but this one will soon start to turn. And you'll see that the brake is the effective difference. Okay, just a little demo. Don't need to go too far along those lines. All right, now we can take the prop brake off, put the guard back on. Now if you were to look outside, you can see they're both rotating, and they're not producing any power yet for the wild electrical systems and the the hydraulics up here yet, because they're still in the feathered condition. Until they're up to auto, then they are able to produce the electrical power that we want to see eventually. All right, let's go back up just to make sure we got all of our cues taken care of. Recirc fan now, pack valve, engine bleed. We can get our engine start back off to off and start aboard up here at the top. Everything else should be good to go. Oh, we might as well nav, logo, wing. Well, we don't need wing light unless we're looking for some ice. Taxi takeoff. That's what your taxi light is. Your landing lights are here. This is a nose light, and this comes off the wider wing area there, and it's really bright for landing and that kind of stuff, takeoffs. I think the rest of it up above looks good. That's the last stop up there. Okay. Now, the control levers, if we've been pushed back and we're ready to go, we're going to left click on both of those up to the auto line, and we're going to leave those alone. Now, this is how we're going to taxi. We got takeoff here, ground idle there, auto there. There shouldn't be anything that's really needed now in order to taxi. We may just give it a little bit of thrust for the power levers there to get things rolling, but other than that, it should be good. Flaps 15. Let's see what else. We'd set our autopilot, all the data there. Okay, and then the usual business as we go along. If you're familiar with aircraft, that shouldn't be a problem. V1 and VR in this aircraft are the exact same thing. You'd want to get your flaps up as soon as it's available. Possible airspeed wise, gear up. You want to control your airspeed to 160 on climb out and rate 1,000 to 1,500. What else are we going to look at here? Ceiling is 24,000. It's got a really long range. That's good. 700 kilos of fuel will be used the first hour, and 600 kilos of fuel on average every hour after that. So if you need to figure out your fuels. Descent indicated airspeed is 230 to 235. That's what you want to aim for. And then on approach and landing, your flaps will be 170 at flaps 15, 160, gear down, flaps 25. Power management then to takeoff. It was in cruise up to that point. 150 knots, you want to go flaps 35. And by the way, your power levers on that final bit as you're reducing speed can go to flight idle at the lowest level. and then just adjust your power levers for your approach speed, and then just go ahead and land as you normally would. Autopilot Disconnect, you press it twice, and that should take care of business. Hey, thanks for watching, and any comments or notes are appreciated. I hope that this has been a help to you. I know that it'll be a help to me as the days go on. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Enjoy. Bye-bye.